Right now, I'd bet your plan for getting old is probably based on, well, a very comforting illusion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all do it.
Right. Like you picture the rocking chair on a wraparound porch or a
Yeah.
garden you finally have the time to actually tend to.
A bunch of grandkids visiting on sunny weekends, yeah.
Exactly. It's this beautiful picture. But today, we're looking at an essay dated July 19, 2025. It's by an author named Xu Feng titled, How Do You See This Way of Elder Care? And it basically argues that for the vast majority of us, that cozy illusion is just, it's going to shatter against a very dark reality.
Yeah, and it's just a profound piece of writing
Hmm,
because it completely refuses to let you look away.
it really does.
Like, we spend billions of dollars as a society, on anti-aging creams and longevity
Oh,
diets.
absolutely. The whole industry.
Right, essentially trying to outrun the clock.
Yeah.
But this essay forces us to just stop running and actually look at what happens when the clock inevitably catches up to us.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are going to explore this stark, frankly brutal assessment of modern aging from the text. And then we'll unpack a radically different, seemingly utopian alternative for elder care that the author actually proposes.
Which is quite the journey. Yeah.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because before Zhu Feng offers any kind of solution, we are dragged into the grim baseline of what getting older actually looks like today.
Yeah, the author starts straight with the physical reality. It's the natural decline of human biology.
It's stuff nobody wants to talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The loss of physical strength, that slow draining of vitality and spirit. We go from this sort of abstract concept of, getting older to the very real scenario of falling ill, of being completely bedridden
Right.
and suddenly needing another human being nearby, literally just to survive the next 24 hours.
And if no one is there, the scenario just goes to a terrifying place. Like, Xu Feng writes about elders passing away in absolute silence.
Yeah, that part is heavy.
It is. Their absence goes completely unnoticed for days. And the detail that just stops you in your tracks is the assertion that often it isn't until a body begins to decay and emit a foul smell that anyone in the vicinity even becomes aware that a life has ended.
It's chilling.
It really is. The author points out that very few people on Earth can say with absolute certainty that their final years will avoid this kind of total isolation.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of why that specific visceral imagery is used. The smell of decay.
To shock the reader.
Well, yes, but also it strips away the polite, sanitized language we always use around aging. We love phrases like growing old gracefully or
Right.
Passing away peacefully.
Yeah, it softens the blow.
Exactly. But humans are biologically wired as social creatures. For hundreds of thousands of years, our survival depended on the tribe. So slipping out of existence completely unnoticed, literally rotting behind a closed door while society just hums along outside, it triggers our absolute deepest evolutionary terror.
Wow, yeah. It's the ultimate form of social rejection.
Apply sleep.
I look at this isolated physical decline like an abandoned house in a busy, affluent neighborhood.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, because it doesn't just collapse overnight. First, the paint peels, then the windows get dusty, the rooms go cold. It just slowly loses all its warmth until it is entirely forgotten by the people walking past it every single day. But here is the thing about that.
How's that?
The neighbors don't look away just because they're busy. They look away because looking at the decaying house reminds them that their own house is going to decay eventually.
Ah, right. It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. So I have to ask, is this fear of decaying and isolation, of becoming that abandoned house, is that the ultimate unspoken anxiety driving how we warehouse the elderly today?
I mean, it is the defining anxiety, without a doubt. We segregate the elderly so we don't have to constantly confront our own biological trajectory.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Xu Feng recognizes this terror, pulling the thread further to ask why our traditional safety nets are failing so spectacularly at catching these vulnerable elders.
Because historically, we had two massive pillars we leaned on for elder care, right? And pillar one was the family.
The family unit, yes.
For generations, the implicit social contract was basically you raise your children, and in return, they care for you when your strength fades.
Right.
But urbanization has just completely fractured that geographic proximity. Young people are pulled far away from their hometowns for distant jobs.
But the breakdown goes way beyond mere geography, too. The modern economic reality has fundamentally altered our actual capacity for care.
How so?
Well, the essays state that today's young and middle-aged adults are already completely crushed by the pressures of mere survival. It's a daily grind that drains their, quoting the text here, sweat and soul.
Man, sweat and soul. That's so evocative. And
Not the cl-
let's actually define what that looks like in practice, because society loves to throw around the concept of filial piety, this deep-rooted cultural expectation of respecting and caring for your parents.
Oh, sure. It gets weaponized a lot.
Yes. When families fail to provide this care, the narrative often turns into a massive guilt trip about younger generations just being selfish.
Right, which isn't fair.
It's not. Look at the modern sandwich generation. These are middle-aged adults who are simultaneously trying to raise their own toddlers, pay exorbitant modern housing costs, and somehow manage the 24/7 care of an aging parent with dementia.
It's impossible.
I see that person as someone desperately treading water in the middle of a freezing ocean. Asking them to take on full-time elder care is like asking someone who is actively drowning to act as a lifeguard for someone else.
Yeah, that's a brilliant analogy.
You physically just cannot do it. And Shu Feng points this out perfectly, saying the heart is willing, but strength is not enough.
And that distinction is just so vital. This is a systemic failure, not a moral one.
Right?
The nuclear family structure, two parents and a couple of kids living in an isolated suburban house, it was simply never designed to handle 20 years of complex elder care.
We didn't always live like that, right?
No, historically, elder care was distributed across a whole village network of extended aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors.
The whole community pitched in.
Exactly. When we moved into these hyper-individualized nuclear families, we lost the bandwidth for caregiving. The current socioeconomic engine demands 50 hours a week of labor just to survive. It's fundamentally incompatible with compassionate, hands-on aging.
So when the family pillar collapses under that structural weight, people with the financial means are forced to turn to the second pillar, institutions.
Nursing homes, assisted living facilities.
Right. And Shui Feng does not sugarcoat the reality of these places at all.
No, the assessment is blunt. Nursing homes are described in the text as places to wait for death.
That's grim.
It is. The argument is that institutionalized life holds no flavor and no joy, only helpless resignation. It is a path taken only when all other doors are firmly bolted shut.
And even if you manage to hire private caregivers, or even if the nursing home staff is genuinely diligent, the bitter truths remain.
Yeah, because institutional care fundamentally commodifies human connection.
Wow, yeah, you're paying for a transaction, not a relationship.
Exactly. An overworked nurse checking your vitals at 2:00 a.m. because their job is biologically and psychologically different from a loved one holding your hand.
So we've established a genuinely terrifying baseline here. Dying alone is a visceral fear, family care is structurally impossible for most, and institutional care is just this soulless transaction.
It's bleak.
So where does that leave a society that is rapidly aging?
Well, it leaves us requiring a complete paradigm shift. The systems we have are broken beyond repair. So the author pivots from this bleak diagnosis to a radically different vision of what elder care could and should look like.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the essay suddenly paints this picture of a utopian community that completely blows up the modern blueprint of aging.
It really does.
It's described as this vibrant, multi-generational ecosystem. Elders are not segregated into sterile, medicalized facilities on the outskirts of town.
No, they're right in the middle of it.
Right. They're entirely integrated. They are surrounded by middle-aged adults, youth, and cheerful children, bringing this boundless, chaotic energy to the environment.
And that integration reverses the very isolation that accelerates decline in the first place.
Yeah.
Modern society is obsessed with categorizing and separating people by age.
Oh, for sure. We put children in schools, working-age adults in office parks.
And the elderly in care homes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this model shatters those walls. It operates on the sociological premise that intergenerational contact is biologically necessary for human thriving.
And the logistics of how this community operates are just fascinating. It relies on a system of shared labor, cooking, cleaning, laundry. These daily grinds are lovingly handled by others in the community.
Yeah, but elders aren't just passive, helpless recipients of this care either.
Right. If they still have the energy, they actually contribute what they can to the community engine.
Which is how you maintain a sense of purpose. And purpose is a psychological factor that is highly correlated with longevity and cognitive health. When you take away someone's ability to contribute, they often decline rapidly.
That makes total sense.
But beyond just the chores, the essay highlights the profound joy of this setup. It describes these monthly evenings of music, laughter, and games. Elders are surrounded by what the author calls brothers and sisters of the soul.
And the poetry of that is beautiful, but I actually have to hit pause here and push back on the reality of the compassionate care being described.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the essay says that for those who are failing physically, their bedding is washed with care, kind souls help them bathe, and warm meals are brought directly to their bedside.
Right.
But here is the detail that trips me up. It says, this is done always with a smile and never a single complaint. I mean, human nature is flawed. Anyone who has ever cared for a sick relative knows that caregiving is exhausting, it's frustrating, and it's messy. How does a community avoid the inevitable crushing caregiver burnout if there is truly never a single complaint?
It's a fair question.
Is this just a fantasy?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like an all-inclusive cruise ship where the staff is financially compensated to smile at you while cleaning up your mess.
Right, and it sounds impossible if we view it through the lens of our current nuclear family model. But we have to analyze how a communal structure fundamentally alters the neurobiology and psychology of tasks.
Okay, walk me through that.
So in our current system, the burden of, say, bathing an elder or washing soiled bedding falls on one drowning family member, or maybe one underpaid, overworked nursing home employee who's managing 12 patients.
Right.
It is endless, it's thankless, and most importantly, it's isolating.
So you're saying it's the isolation of the task that causes the burnout, not just the physical grossness of the task itself?
Precisely. The opposite of isolation is what this community provides. In this model, the physical and cognitive load is distributed across dozens, maybe hundreds of people.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If you are only bringing a warm meal to a bedside once a week rather than 3 times a day, every day for 5 years, your psychological relationship to that task completely changes.
It ceases to be a crushing obligation.
Exactly. It becomes a brief, manageable act of communal love. The presence of youth, the shared responsibility, the intergenerational energy, this community structure is the actual antidote to caregiver fatigue.
You dilute the burden until it becomes a joy rather than a chore.
Yes.
Okay, that actually makes logical sense. But if sharing the physical burden of chores solves the caregiver burnout, how does this community handle the immense emotional burden of the ultimate end? Because the essay naturally progresses to how they handle death.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern approach to death is basically a clinical nightmare. We have highly medicalized the end of life.
We really have.
It happens in sterile hospital rooms, surrounded by the beeping of machines, harsh fluorescent lights, and just a profound atmosphere of panic.
Yeah, it's treated like an emergency.
Modern medicine treats death as a failure of the body, a disease to be fought until the bitter end. And that leaves the dying individual terrified and pumped, full of adrenaline.
But Shuifeng describes a completely inverted experience here. When life draws to a close in this community, there are no alarms. There are no frantic interventions. Gentle hands handle everything with grace and love.
It's a totally different atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah.
There's chanting and blessings to guide the departing soul. The essay actually asserts that in this setting, most who pass are bound for heaven. But regardless of your religious beliefs, there is this incredible line. Death is no longer a thing of fear, but a joyous threshold longed for in peace.
And by wrapping the dying individual in community ritual like that, they completely remove the existential dread that was established at the very beginning of the text.
Right, the terror of decaying and silent isolation.
Exactly. Rituals like chanting, holding hands, spoken blessings, they serve a very real psychological purpose. They lower cortisol levels, reduce panic, and signal to the dying person's nervous system that they are safe and held by their tribe. It transforms death from an emergency into a natural, supported transition.
I mean, just imagine the profound relief of knowing that your exit from this world is going to be handled that way.
It changes everything.
It really does. If you knew right now with absolute certainty that a gentle, supported, loving exit was guaranteed for you, how much easier would your aging process be? It literally changes how you live the rest of your life today because you aren't carrying around that subconscious terror of the end.
It removes the anxiety of the unknown and replaces it with a blueprint for dignity.
Yeah.
However, just as the reader is fully bought in, wondering where they can sign up for this utopian community, the essay delivers a massive reality check.
Yeah, there is a major twist here. Shuifeng asks the reader if they believe such a life could truly exist on Earth, and then drops this revelation. Let me tell you the truth. This life has already existed in this world for more than 10 years.
which is just a brilliant rhetorical pivot.
Yeah.
It forces the reader to stop looking at this as theoretical philosophy or science fiction
Yeah.
and confront it as a claim of actual applied sociology.
The model exists,
It exists.
but there is a massive catch. Shu Feng asks, can every elder enjoy such a life? And the answer is a flat no.
Right.
The author states that this community is entirely exclusive. It is reserved for only those whose souls have been purified.
A very specific phrasing.
Very. So what does this all mean? Because I have to push back heavily on this caveat. If you need a purified soul to get past the velvet rope into this community, doesn't this cease to be a replicable model for society?
I see where you're going with this.
Right. Doesn't it just become an exclusive spiritual club? Like a luxury retreat for the enlightened few, while the rest of us flawed, messy, unpurified mortals are left to decay in those soulless nursing homes.
Well, this raises an important question, and it is honestly the hinge upon which the entire essay turns. That final condition shifts the text. It stops being a blueprint for a new type of neighborhood and becomes a mirror held up to our own character.
How do you mean?
Well, what does a purified soul actually mean in a behavioral sense? It means stripping away ego, hyper-individualism, and the modern consumer mindset.
Oh. You can't build a perfect selfless house using selfish, rotten wood.
That the core argument, yes. Think about the tragedy of the commons. If you bring modern entitlement into a voluntary community, if you complain about the temperature of the room, if you demand a specific type of tea, if you refuse to help with the laundry because you feel it's beneath you,
The whole thing falls apart.
instantly,
Yeah.
the fragile ecosystem of shared care instantly collapses. It devolves right back into the transactional systems of isolation and institutionalization we are trying to escape.
Wow, yeah.
The prerequisite of a purified soul is literally the only thing that guarantees the environment where care is given, never with complaint.
So the lack of caregiver burnout isn't just about sharing the chores across 50 people. It's about the fundamental behavioral and spiritual makeup of the people doing the chores.
Exactly.
You cannot have the utopian external environment without doing the grueling internal work first.
External utopia is impossible without internal transformation.
Yeah.
You cannot just drop flawed people into a perfect system and expect it to remain perfect.
Wow. That forces you to look inward in a very uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
We started this deep dive looking at the heartbreaking reality of dying alone, the terror of becoming that abandoned house slowly decaying while society walks by. We unpacked the total systemic collapse of modern care, how our families are drowning in the demands of modern survival, and our institutions have become transactional waiting rooms for the end. And we explore this incredibly beautiful, viable vision of a joyful intergenerational community where death is welcomed as a joyous threshold. But it comes with that ultimate unyielding condition.
The purified soul.
Right. It demands that we ask ourselves not just where we want to grow old, but who we need to become in order to participate in that kind of ending. It asks you to consider how you might start dropping your own ego and cultivating your own brothers and sisters of the soul right now today rather than waiting for old age to arrive.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over regarding that ultimate condition. Shui Feng argues that you must have a purified soul to enter this community.
Right.
But what if we were looking at the causality backwards?
What do you mean?
What if having a completely purified soul isn't a prerequisite to getting past the velvet rope? What if instead the daily, messy, exhausting act of participating in a loving, multi-generational community, choosing to wash the bedding, bringing the warm meal to a neighbor, sitting and chanting at a bedside, is actually the very mechanism that purifies your soul in the first place?
Oh, wow. You don't get purified to build the house. You build the house, and the act of building it is what makes you who you need to be.
Perhaps the utopia isn't a place you go to, it's a practice you engage in. And maybe if we start engaging in that practice together today, none of us has to be that abandoned house at the end of the street.
That is an incredibly powerful way to look at it.